Right, I'm gonna start streaming now. You guys can see, right? Alright, so basically, a high time frame on BTC. Let me just get rid of all this, start from scratch. Okay, so yearly. Right now at Bitcoin, I'm kind of thinking we go range bound for a while, right? So we kind of just end up chopping in this kind of region, and that's mainly just because you have your previous range here, right? But you guys on the stream, right? You can see. All right, okay, whatever. So basically, you've got this previous range here. That's the low of the range. This was your value area here for the entire range. Let me mark this all out. So that's your value area, and then on top of that, you had your anchored VWAP from the top, right? So the main idea here was like, once you start reaccepting into yearly value here, because this upper yearly value is an empty bracket, you tend to get like a quick expansion upward, right? But then the issue here now with the lower 80 area is that you have multiple resistances here, right? So you flip the previous range low as support here. You also have the previous like 2024 the value area high here as well as support now. And then on above here, you have your yearly value area high, and you also have your anchored VWAP from all-time high, right? So pretty much the 83 area here is like overlapping resistance, right? If you flip this 83 area, then like, Bitcoin looks a lot nicer, like we'll end up flipping, going towards value here, and then we end up being range bound within this value, right? If we accept. At that point, that's where like, you start going for the 90 plus area, right? But then the issue here though is that since you do have this overlapping resistance and you have overlapping support here, we can just go range bound here for a little while. For me, if we end up losing, I think it's 77. That's where like I'd start to get bearish, right? Because at that point, price should just end up retracing this entire move downward, right? But then again, like if we end up like getting continued SFPs here, this is where I'd also look for shorts, right? So either look for a short on a sweep of the initial high here, or if we get like another lower high here and then the range starts to break down, then I'd look much lower toward probably first 77, mainly just because like you have these imbalances, right? I think you have 2 week value here as well. Something like that, right? And I think already we've kind of seen how, with price, we've broken out that 2 week value, we've retested it, and then we've ended up like pumping out. I think this is the 2024 value area high retest. But yeah, like if we end up getting another SFP either on another attempt at the high or like on a higher low, and then like some sort of like rejection of her, I'd look for like mean reversion back into that range, and again you've got those imbalances that line up with it. I think this would also be like the first time that we've touched the quarterly value now, because I think that was still monthly value, but right now, I mean, like we're halfway through May, so I'd say this is the developing quarterly value. If you end up seeing like a deeper move in with like that, you'd want to see like a continued either mean reversion back here or like continuation higher, right? But again, like if this ends up like going down to 77 and then it starts going like starts just compressing here, then that's where like you have your bearish like down move towards all these lows, right? But yeah, I think the TPOs are a lot cleaner though, because at the minute with Bitcoin, all I can say with the price action chart is like literally nothing's happened to her. It's just this is your range, and just wait for it to either break in below or like if we get a breakout or if we get an SFP here. But I think TPOs are a lot cleaner here. With the TPO, pretty much we saw the composite range here, right? I'll just show you what I mean. So you had like, 2 weeks of overlapping value here. You can just merge these together. And then above that here, I think this is the main kind of profile you're looking for. Because like as soon as like, we broke out of this 5-week value here, the main target was like, the high volume nodes here, right? And then once you did flip the high volume nodes here, let me just delete that. Once we flip these high volume nodes here, the next area would have been the high volume nodes up here and the value area low of like, the big dump range, right? And if you just extend out the value here and the volume nodes, you can just see how price reacted. 1 second. You can go and see how like, the first value area here kind of got front ran, we put in a higher low, then we ended up pushing up to the volume node, right? And then after that, like, we just rejected, and then now we're going to go in range bound. But I'll get onto this in a second. Just to do this and this. So at the minute, you've got like, this double distribution setup or like triple distribution setup. And what you kind of want to do is you want to play these as like small individual ranges within this value area, right? So just right now, since we've had the weekly open, we've just seen price kind of just dump in and all that kind of stuff. At the minute, we left like, a decent low there. There's a poor low here as well. So if we do end up smacking lower, I'd look for a higher low either here at this volume node here, kind of just to play the range. And then if we end up bouncing from there, then I'd look for the previous weekly value area high here, right? But then with the value area high here, this is what I mean by the low high. If we get capped within that previous weekly value area high, then this would then confirm like, we end up going, continuing lower with this entire move and then targeting the value area low of the weekly, right? And this is kind of like how you play range bound scenarios, right? Because you always have like, your value area kind of like that. And we're kind of range bound within value until proven otherwise. And the way that you kind of play this would be like, you go towards the highs, either get your compression and continuation, or you get like a thin move to the upside, and then you get your retest of value and then lower, right? And then you can kind of just flip this for like, the lows, right? So for me, what I'll be looking for is either a low time frame long here. I mean, I don't like longing like when you have like a poor low next door, but like again, like we built up a decent amount of volume there, and it's a daily POC, right? And as well, it's like the low end of this, like, honestly, I'd say this is just like a double distribution, to be honest, because of how close these two are in terms of volume. Because again, like, I don't know, when I prefer volume over time in these kind of scenarios, because like, I mean, if you just draw a time, like a volume distribution, it's a double distribution. So yeah, I mean, if we get like a higher low here, potentially, then I'll look for longs, but this is my key breakout level, right? If you don't flip her, then much lower down towards 79.8. And then again, if we do flip her, again, like it was a thin move upward here. So I'd expect like a quick continuation higher, and it just depends on like, if price can take the wick and then build value here and continue higher, or if like, just SFPs. I think with the value area low here, you can either get like a pretty nice long again. I think this is much cleaner long than here. This would be like, your low time frame. But if it goes here, I expect like, a lot of shorts to come in, because again, like it's a key psychological level, since it's like the 80 area and it's also like, weekly value area. So like from here, same kind of play as here, where, you just look for longs, and then like, you get your continuation higher, and then you'll see whatnot. Like this, it's just range bound behavior, and then the bearish reaction here would be if you end up getting like, a lower high, either into that daily volume, into the daily value area low here, or like, if we do get like a lot of volume build up here, if we just reject like, 80 something, and then we end up just dumping lower. And at that point, you've got like, your lower 78 area, because again, like with this kind of distribution, you had like, a big volume cluster here. So I wouldn't look for like, an immediate dump lower, but 78, and then if we do bleed below 78, then you've got like the rest of the value area here. And I think one thing to note as well with the value is that since we've already tapped into the value area high as we kind of just like, pumped out, retest, and then put in a low high, put in a high low here. I think that, if we do lose previous weekly value area low here, then we should get like a big move lower if this does get lost. So again, like just redrawing what I had here. I think with these bearish reactions, you've kind of got two where like you kind of just dump like that. You get like your SFP and continuation lower. I'm not sure if I'll look for a full traversal of that weekly value area, mainly just because you have another set of like trap volume up there, like the 77.6 area. So like I'll probably just look for a mean reversion here, and I think like if price does end up like not reclaiming the 80s, that's where you add into your shorts and extend lower, right? And at that point there you would look for like 76 and significantly lower. I think the quarterly value here is pretty clean though, because like let's say we do get our move lower toward that 76 area. Like I was saying, this whole value is pretty empty. This is untested quarterly value. So again, like if this does go below 80 and it holds below 80, it's going to be quite a rapid move lower. Let me just see if you guys got any questions. All right, guys, any questions so far? All right. Just to show the view app, because at the minute you don't really have too many view app levels to like use in terms of like support resistance, right? You've got the developing monthly and you have the previous weekly, right? So just to developing monthly, again, it's an untraded lower band here, right? So if we do get like a move into the view app here, wait, let me just show you the weekly first because I think that would take precedence. Yeah, so the weekly, you can already see like we've already tapped the weekly view app. That weekly lower value is also kind of untraded. So like let me just mark that out. It's been a while since I've marked out levels. All right, so basically, we've already kind of just tapped into the view app here, right, on the weekly, and right now we're kind of just slow grinding into the weekly view app here. I don't think this looks too good right now, just looking at those highs. But basically, that low there is a poor low, clearly, and just looking at the wick reaction there, I think if this ends up getting like an SFP right here, right now, like potentially you could get long here at daily value area low, but I don't like longing like at poor lows, if that makes sense. So I'd kind of expect like a flush lower, or at least a flush to take out that wicker. Either one, like either a shallow sweep like that, or like this is the high probability setup. Just going to weekly value area low. Around here, that's where I look for a long, and then a bounce and whatnot. But then looking at monthly value, you've got this untraded bracket, and this is why 80k is so important, because again, like 80k was the key flip level that we had, right? Like you saw the reactions here at 80k, right? This is also monthly view app, and the lower bracket is also pretty empty as well. It's untraded. So if we do end up getting our rejection here at monthly view app, then this should be a swift move lower. Because again, like you just have chains of poor lows and whatnot. But yeah, I think same thing with the view app on the weekly, where you have this big gap here. So like if this does end up like holding, this is like an easy either short or just like see if it builds value. If it builds value like that, then this is just going to pump out. But if it doesn't build value and you just see like an immediate SFP here or an immediate SFP here, then these are shorts. I think in terms of my watch list and whatnot, I've not really looked at ETH at all, just because like I've got spot ETH, but again, like I've not been liking how ETH is trading. But before I go on to that, 1 second. Because the thing with Bitcoin on the daily was that when it was compressing her, and as it accepted value her, you kind of saw how like the whole mean reversion kind of thing had spiked, right? You can either interpret that as like we're approaching resistance, it's flagging mean reversion, like it's gonna go lower. But then again, like since it's kind of deeply in that mean reversion area, I kind of say like it's kind of just like expansive, because like once you start like compressing like that, you kind of just expand, right? But like right now, I think with Bitcoin, it's still in the drift, so I'm not looking for any higher time frame pullbacks just yet. And in terms of like the 1 hour and whatnot, and the 4 hour, it's still in drift as well. So again, like I don't think Bitcoin's gonna I don't think, I mean it's in a chop zone, right? But I don't think it's just gonna end up dumping out fully just yet. Alright guys, before I go on to ETH and whatnot, do you have any questions at all? Okay, easy. I'll put the chart drawings in chat after as well. But yeah, with ETH, I don't trade ETH much. I've got some on spot, but I don't really like trading ETH at all. It's not really done much. The thing with ETH is, dude, I lost my trading view login, right? So I'm having to be so ghetto right now. Holy shit. Okay. So we've got yearly VWAP. This is, I mean, I don't know. Like with ETH, it's just kind of compressing your yearly VWAP. You can kind of just draw like on the 4 hour range. I don't like ETH at all. So I mean, it's chopping at yearly VWAP. This has gone back inside the quarterly VWAP. So you see how like with Bitcoin, you're kind of like just riding above the quarterly VWAP and whatnot, right? This is already inside the quarterly VWAP, and you can kind of see how again you've got that empty lower bracket. With Ether, again, that's a rejection, failed auction, and you have like your big order block here, right? This order block hasn't been fully mitigated, and you still have like like volume nodes here. So again, like with ETH, if it ends up going back up here, this would be like a pretty good short lower, right? But again, like if it builds value here, and then you get like some sort of like move like that, then like this should be an expansion, right? But then again, like if you just get like what it's doing right now, where you get continuation lower, this should just, I mean, you got like the volume node here, but I'm kind of unsure if it would like sweep those lows, and then give you a reaction kind of like that. But then again, like if you get a move lower here, and then you end up rejecting the POC or the value area here, then that's where you'd look for the same thing where you go for a sweep into quarterly value area low, right? So we'll take out these lows here, these lows here, these lows here. Let me just check ETH Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, ETH Bitcoin just looks dog shit. Holy fuck. It's been a while since I've tracked it. This is a slow grind down. Again, with slow grinds down, with a slow grind down, you tend to usually end up with like, just one big leg down, right? I think in terms of big leg down, I mean, this doesn't this doesn't really look good because you've got your gap here, right? We've already mitigated the gap, you rejected previous value there, and then the next POI would naturally be a revisit of that high there, like around the 0.026, right? Yeah, I mean, ETH does not look like it's going to be doing well. I mean, that can either mean that, like, Bitcoin expands again and then ETH doesn't, or it can just mean that, like, when Bitcoin dumps, ETH is just going to shit the bed. I mean, that would be like, what, like a 6% move downward? And if it goes back into range value, that's like a 10% move down. So either way, like, ETH is just going to underperform Bitcoin for a while. I think with Sol Bitcoin, I was kind of getting a little bit excited with Solana because it was tapping, not because I'm buying Solana, but just because of like how it affects other altcoins, and that was mainly just because same thing here where you tap into the weekly gap here, right? Price goes sideways, then you get like your move downward, right? Then we got like, I think it just front ran that high ever so slightly, but then ended up pumping outward, and I guess now it's just mitigating. It kind of just mitigated this thing here. I think on the weekly it was like this weekly wick that we see there that got mitigated, and then now it's like either it puts in a higher low here or like we kind of just go range around her. But I think Solana is probably gonna outperform ETH for a while, so it might be worth like trading some altcoins. I think something I was looking at was LDO, mainly just because again, like with LDO, it's kind of like a mixture, right? Because I've kind of just been buying inside this accumulation and then bought some more here. But I think with this is what I mean about like the whole thing about like building building value, right? Where you see how it just ended up like dumping out of the previous yearly value. Get rid of the anchor view up. So it dumped heavily out of previous yearly value, left a big wick here, right? We get that slow grind down, and then we get like this whole flush move here, and this is what I mean by the whole flush, where you just have like one-sided kind of traffic where you just get like that kind of move. All right, then it builds value, ends up like rejecting. I think this was like quarterly value at the time or something, but ended up like losing, ended up dumping, SFP this, but then it started building value here, and over time it kind of just accepted into the yearly value, right? So like with the thing altcoins is that there are a lot of altcoins that are down like 90% from the highs, right? 80% from the highs, 50% from the highs, right? But like when you see an altcoin kind of just that has like a previous wick here and it starts just ranging and then accepting into like current values, right? Then like that's usually bullish, right? And we get this move higher. We left an order block here for a revisit later on. Pretty much with this, I'm kind of thinking you get another stab higher. I think you can probably just like pub trade this probably at this point. But if we get like another stab higher, we should kind of sweep the high here. I don't know, triple tap or like whatnot, but should get an SFP up to yearly value area high, and then from there dump, right? I think the more bearish scenario here would be like if we just go range bound, because again it's dependent on what Bitcoin does, but if it does get an SFP here, it goes range bound here, then you'd kind of look for it to be rotational back into this kind of like value, right? But then I think the more bullish case would just be price kind of going sideways here. You get like you retest that high, and then you get like another push higher into previous value, right? And again, from there you kind of look for like this value and like previous yearly value area low, right? But again, like if you are within the value area here on the yearly, then you kind of just have to play the range, right? But when you go outside of that, then it's pretty one-sided. Another one was Sui. I've shown this on Twitter. But with Sui, it's kind of this has been very, very nice, and I bought this instead of Solana because the last time I checked, Sui is its own network, but again, like when I saw Solana was like supposed to go higher, I kind of just looked at it and I was like you've got your yearly VIP right there, like it's not really gonna, it's gonna be like what, like a 10% move at most. But then with Sui, for example, like it was a much more volatile move, especially with that MT bracket, right? So with Sui, it's at the previous range low, right? And you have your previous VIP. So like pretty much this should just go range bound here, cool off, because again, like this is like what, like a 50% pump nearly. It should just go range bound her, and as it goes range bound, I'd either look to see if we get like, you know, a retest of yearly VWAP, right? Or if there's quarterly VWAP nearby, or quarterly value. Again, yeah, quarterly value is around 115. So if this goes range bound her and we get a tap at that 115 area, that's a really nice bid area. But again, like if the SFP is the highs, because altcoins are going to dump a lot harder than Bitcoin, so it'd be really good to just get like, you know, an SFP of these highs into that yearly value area high and into these gaps, right? If I just look at the value area for the range, I mean, it's already mean reverted to the range. I didn't realize that. But yeah, if you get like a range bound scenario here, and we get like an SFP, we'll sweep those highs, this would be like a good short all the way back down to like $1, and then maybe even like, depending on how low Bitcoin goes, a sweep of the range low there, right? If Bitcoin does end up performing well and it goes higher, then of course, like you'd look for a breakout of yearly value, right? And from there, you would look for previous yearly VWAP here, right? That's previous quarterly, retarded. Sorry, yeah, previous yearly value area low here, which coincides with that high there of that range deviation. But again, like, I don't know, like you've got overlapping levels here with the previous range, the previous low, and the value area high here. So in my eyes, like an SFP here would probably be like a nicer option, but like you just have to be dynamic. Is the accurate to be up Fury or paid? I can put the source code in chat, like it's fine. Another one was Tau. So with Tau, I saw a lot of because the thing with altcoins, right, is that if you are looking to short something, right, like a swing short lower, of course, like with Bitcoin, you know, wait, I didn't cover this earlier, but I think with high time frame on Bitcoin, if we do end up finding rejection here, like either here or at the 85 area, right, or 86 area, if we get like, you know, rejection, either one from these two areas, right? Later on throughout the year, mainly just because you have your value here. Because like we took the elevator upwards, right? Oh, sorry, we took the escalator upwards. If this ends up like, you know, rejecting at like, you know, 80 at current highs, or like, you know, 86. For me personally, I think 86, right? But if this ends up rejecting at those highs, and then we get like, you know, the immediate dump below where it just takes out all these highs, right? I'd expect as the year progresses for Bitcoin to end up tagging right now 77, but later in the year, retest the value area low, and then eventually we take out that swing low into this low here. And I think we just look at overall volume pockets, right? I mean, the next volume pocket would be the total kind of, let me just put it in like that. Actually, no, wait, my bad. For me, it would just be like, you know, the lower end of these volume pockets into that value area low. I'm not sure if I can call this like a range value area low, but like just looking at like, you know, the pockets of support and resistance, right? Already we kind of tapped into like, you know, this big volume pocket, but you just draw like, you know, a range out that kind of goes like that, right? So like I look for like, you know, the lower to mid 50s. But yeah, that's just like, you know, longer term bids as the year progresses. But again, like I said, for now, you can just play this range bound, right? But yeah, going back to Tau, this had like a huge bearish case, right? Because they had like a bunch of news. I can't remember what it was. I saw a good post by it from Waffles on Twitter. But like right now, this is like, you know, reclaiming higher. As it reclaims higher, I think right now the main kind of target on here would be these highs, of course, right? And just in terms of yearly value, right? This is just steam. This is just slow grinding higher. And with slow grind higher, it's the same thing as a slow grind down, right? Where eventually you kind of get like, your big explosion upward, right? I think with this you had, this is such an ugly range, holy fuck. With this you had this previous kind of range here, coincides with previous yearly value area high as well. If this does end up like, pushing into that high there, and then kind of just building value, right? Then you'd kind of look for a push higher towards like, the 480 area, right? But again, like like with Tau, there's like some tokenomics behind that and like some fundamentals, so I'd have to double check that. But with Tau, I'd kind of look for either one of these two highs to get taken. But at the minute, there's not really that many altcoins to look at, because Dash was one that was shilling. I think with Dash, this is just cooling off. A lower push to, again, this is a slow grind. Lower, I might actually find some shorts in some of these altcoins, because like these are really, really good setups to like miss out on, But again, this should just dump lower and take out the gap there at like the lower 40 area. Just check monthly. But again, you've got like, your lower empty monthly value here as well. So if this ends up like, giving you something like that, that'll be a good bid for range bound plays. But again, like if it ends up going higher back into like, the 48, 50 area and it rejects, that's where you'd short all the way back down into range breakout, But yeah, there's not really that much more that I'm looking at in terms of altcoins and Bitcoin. But yeah, for me right now, like I said, I'm just going to play the range. I'm just going to play like, the weekly VWAP range, as I always do. Again, like I said, above weekly value area high is bullish, but then if you end up like, seeing it stall around here, or like stall at the initial breakout here, then that's of course bearish, right? But then if it ends up like, kind of just slow grinding into that POI, then we're going to go higher towards like, the high here and 86k. In terms of low time frame, like I said, there's potential longs here at the 80.8 area. You got confluence from, I forgot I had my session profiles as well. One second. Yeah, this is pretty ugly. This is very ugly. Yeah, I wouldn't really look for longs there, to be honest, because each of these sessions have like pretty poor lows. So like I'd be hesitant of that. I kind of just look for weekly value area low here. This is like the better long to take. But then if we end up like, tagging weekly value area low, and then we tag into that wick here, or the VWAP here, and then we end up rejecting, then that's your cue to extend or add to your short. And then from there you target this area here, the 78k area, which coincides with, I believe, monthly value area low. I think you also had a daily level there. 1 second. Yeah, you've got like pretty good like double distribution here, like a volume based one. At the 78.9, 79 down towards 78.3. So like, yeah, if you end up breaking lower, this is a good area to look for temporary relief. From there, you'd kind of want to long back toward 80, but then if you lose this, then like 77, and then from there it kind of gets a bit more problematic, as you have this value that you're now within, right? But honestly, like personally, like dude, like I'm just kind of thinking we just go sideways for a while longer, especially since we've got like a lot of Fed news. I think this week I don't think this week's like gonna see a lot of like, price action until like, the midweek, mainly just because, again, like tomorrow we have CPI. Wednesday we have PPI, and then Thursday we've got jobless data. Like, dude, like we have so much news this week, so I wouldn't be surprised to just see like continued sideways action between the highs and lows here. I think it'll be the midweek when I think tomorrow CPI will be a big move, right? But like today, just expansion in both directions. But yeah, I'll send the markups in chat. But guys, I'll take some questions though before I go. I think I said I'll do a AMA. So just shoot away with any questions. Zach. Dude, Zach is one of those coins where like as soon as Zach just pumps, right, this market just tops. Like every single time, like Zach pumps, the market just dumps after. So if Zach, in terms of high time frame, this is a heavily inefficient move. Ends up taking out that high. Let me just look at the view app. So with the yearly view app and whatnot, fuck, you've got like this previous yearly here. I wouldn't be surprised to just see, because again, like we took that wick, made that SFP there. This should just trend lower, take out the gap here. Usually what I'd say with like, these values is that when you have like, a static value and like, your current value, and you have this kind of empty space, it gets traversed pretty quickly, right? And you can kind of see how we just like one candled it, right? I think like this move should get retraced, or we at least get some sort of like, retest of like, these parallels. I think we already retested this high here already, yeah. So I'd look for like a move back lower down toward like, the 480 area on the high time frame. And then like from 480, you should get a move back into like whatever kind of range forms here. I think with this, on the 4-hour chart, you've kind of got like, your monthly and your quarterly value, which is a little bit easy to use. You have your kind of range like this. Again, like I was saying with Bitcoin, like you can go sideways here, right? Until proven otherwise, right? But then if you get like, your deviation lower, kind of like, you had this deviation. If you get a deviation lower, then like quarterly value or monthly value is pretty good, right? One thing to take note of though is that you have like a huge wick here that formed, and right now we're mitigating the wick. So let me just look at the weekly real quick and monthly. Yeah, this is already inside the monthly value. Previous weekly, yeah. I mean, if this takes out the wick here, then you've got like a move back into like this area here, and then that should give you a nice short lower. If not, like, I mean, you can keep on higher, right? But like again, like this is your primary PY for a long. If you end up like, getting rejection here, or like, you get like a poor reaction off of that, then you've got like the second deviation to make up the other side of the range. But yeah, the thing with like a lot of these coins is that like when you get the expansive move upward, you don't just immediately kind of just retrace. You kind of usually just form a range, and then that range kind of dictates if you get your continuation or if you just get like, a big dump lower. This is a really good move from Zach. But this should cool off now. Anything else, guys? I think if you guys trade order flow and whatnot, the footprints have been really good to play with lately. So I'd say look into footprints as well. I mean, like with Bitcoin, for example, like I don't know, like let's just say the high there, like yesterday 6:30. I think this time zone's different to my footprint. Let's move here. Like the order flow lately has just been absolutely clean, where you just see like climactic buying. Like I don't know, the highs have been trading the highs and lows have been really good. Like you just get like decreasing OI into weekly value. You get like your absorption there. Big trades that come in with like declining delta. Like it's been really clean. Guys, any more questions? Option flow? No, 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 no. I've not been looking at option flows, no. Guys. Any more questions? Because then, if not, I'll wrap up the stream. So, last chance. Just write in chat. Okay, easy. All right, guys. Thank you for your time. Again, like I said, like with Bitcoin, there's a lot of news this week, so like there's not a huge amount to say in terms of just like price action and what's going to happen with the charts. But tomorrow's CPI, so we should see a big move on CPI, and then later on in the week we have PPI. So I don't know, whatever move on CPI should just get retraced, but unless it's like a dog shit CPI. But other than that, not much else to say. Yeah. See you guys. Take care. Thank you. Wait, before I go, again, like, I'm basically wrapping up my Notion at the minute. So I'll be covering view app, market dynamics, profiling, regime, some case studies and whatnot. The mentorship guys get this, and they'll be getting the video series, right? But if you're just interested in the Notion itself, just open up a ticket in the server, and yeah. Thank you for your time, guys. Have fun. Good luck.